Hello and welcome back to our series on getting started with JavaScript. In this video we'll be covering functions and conditional statements. First I'm going to create a new file. Like always, I'm going to do video3.js. I'm going to clear my terminal and I'm going to close the Explorer again. First let's talk about functions. A function is a block of code that can be defined and called by name. Functions are a fundamental building block of JavaScript and are used to perform a specific task or action. So for example, what I could say is function greet, and then I'm going to have parentheses. Inside these parentheses, I'm going to have any parameters that I'm going to take in. So in this case, I'm going to take in a name. Then I'm going to have curly braces, and inside here is the code contained by the function. So what I can then say is console.log. Then I'm going to use string literals. I'm going to say hello, comma, name. So to declare a function, I need the keyword function. Then I need the function name, any parameters, and then the code that's actually going to be included in the function. So if I go and run this, node video3.js, nothing's going to happen because I need a way to actually execute the code inside this function or to call it. So in order to call the function, we need to go down here and we say greet, and then we need to pass in the parameters. So I'm going to say greet John. So if I do that, then we're going to see hello John. If I don't pass in the parameters, then let's see what happens. Well, we're going to see hello undefined because we haven't passed in the correct parameter, so it just takes it as there's nothing there. But if we have greet John, then we're going to get hello John. Now, what we can also do with functions is return a value. So instead, if my function is function add, and I take in two parameters or arguments called x and y, and then inside here I'm going to say x plus y, but I want to return this, so I use the return keyword. So this is going to return the sum of x and y. If I do add 10 and 11, then this is going to return 21. So I can say let total equals add 10, 11, and then I can console.log total. If I run this, we see I get 21. So now let's talk about anonymous functions. An anonymous function is a function that does not have a name, that often uses arguments to other functions or as a way to just create a function on the fly. So something we haven't talked about too much, but that exists, is we can have something like this array, 1, 2, 3, and then we can say dot for each. And this is going to go through each of the elements in the array. But what we can do is say function, and then the for each has an element, and then we're going to console.log element. Let's see what this does. Well, it goes through each of the items, and then for each we get to the function. It takes in the parameter of element, and we console.log that element. Well, what actually is this? This is a callback function. A callback function is a function passed into another function as an argument, and it's invoked by the outer function. So we have this anonymous function that gets executed by the for each, and it passes in the specific element. And what we also have is we can have index and the actual array. So if I log these out as well, I can say element, comma, index, comma, array. And then we're going to see that we get 1 is the value or the element. Then we're going to see we get 0, which is the index, and then the actual array. So those are anonymous functions. This isn't quite the cleanest way we can write this though, because we don't actually need the function keyword. What we can just do is have these brackets and then an arrow, and then this is going to be our new function. So we have brackets here, an arrow, and then our curly braces. And this is called an arrow function. And it works in the exact same way. We're going to get the same output, but it's a bit of a cleaner way to write functions, especially if they're in this sort of format where we have a callback function. In a similar way, what we can actually do is write all of our functions like arrow functions. We could have said const greet equals parentheses, then an arrow, then curly braces, and we can say console.log hello, comma, name. And if we pass name in like this is the exact same thing. So we can just call this, we can say greet John, and it's going to work in the same way. This is a matter of preference, but personally, when we have functions, I prefer to call the actual function name like we had before, but when we have callback functions, I prefer to have it in the arrow function format. We also have higher order functions. A higher order function is a function that takes a function as an argument or returns a function as a result. So for example, what we can say is function create adder with a parameter x, and then we're going to return function y return x plus y. This might look a bit overwhelming at the moment, but let's break it down. If we call this and say let's add 7 equals create adder 7, and then we console.log add 7 and pass in the item 2, the number 2, and run this, we're going to get 9. So why is this? Our create adder function takes in the parameter x and returns another function which takes in the parameter y and returns x plus y. So initially when we're calling this, what we're getting back as the result is a function with the parameter y that's going to return 7 plus y. Then when we actually call it, we do add 7 and pass in 2, so all we're doing is 7 plus 2 and returning that value. What we also have with functions is something called rest parameters. So what we could have is function some numbers, and in here we're going to return the sum of all the numbers. Then what we're going to do is console.log some numbers, and we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just say that. So now we need to work out what parameters we're going to have. We can't just say number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6, because we might have more than that. So the way we do that is we say ... numbers, and this is called a rest parameter. And then what we can do is we can say numbers.forEach number, and we can use our callback function like this. And if we have a count, let count equals 0, then all we can do is say count plus equals number, and then return count at the end. So if we run this, we're going to see we get 21. What we can also do is have a combination of rest parameters and normal parameters. So instead, if we wanted to say that the sum number with some number, the first parameter is the item that we're going to multiply the total by, then we can do that as well. So we can say multiplier, comma, ... numbers. And then if we change this to 10 instead, and we return count times multiplier, then we're going to see we get 200. So REST parameters make it really easy to pass in an infinite amount of parameters to our functions. Now let's talk about if statements. An if statement is a control structure that allows you to execute a block of code only if a certain condition is met. To use an if statement in JavaScript, we just say if, and then inside here we have our condition, and then we have the block of code that we want to execute if the condition is true. So if we have a variable x, const x equals 10, and we say if x is greater than 5, console.log x is greater than 5, and we run this, we're going to see x is greater than 5 because 10 is greater than 5. If we change this to 3 though, we're not going to get this output and we're just going to get nothing. This is where the else keyword comes in use as well. So we can say if x is greater than 5, console.log x is greater than 5, but then we can say else, console.log x is not greater than 5. And if we run this, we're going to see x is not greater than 5. If now we wanted to specify whether x is greater, equal to, or less than 5, then we can use else if. So we say else if, and then we use the condition the same way as we did before. So I can say else if x is less than 5, then we're going to say x is less than 5, and now we need to account for equal to. So what we could say again is else if x is equal to 5, we could do that, but we could just say else, because there's no other possible scenario. It either has to be greater than, less than, or equal to. So we can just say else console.log x is equal to 5. Now, if we run this, we're going to see x is less than 5. If we put in 5, we're going to see x is equal to 5. And if we put in 6, we're going to see x is greater than 5. Now let's finish up by talking about switch statements. A switch statement is a control structure that allows you to execute a block of code based on the value of a variable. So they're kind of similar to if statements, but with a twist. Let's say const x equals the color blue. We can use a switch statement here, and we can say switch x, and then have curly braces, and say case red. Then we're going to console.log x is red. And then let's try case blue, then case yellow, then case green. So let's do this, case blue, yellow, and green. And let's change these as well. X is green, X is yellow, X is blue. So let's run this and see what we get. Well, we're going to see X is blue, X is yellow, and X is green. But the value of X is blue, so it shouldn't have done yellow and green, surely. Well, with switch statements, if the condition's true, then we also need to break. And breaking means that we're not going to continue any more in the switch statement. And we also have break for if statements and other types of loops. So if we now run this, we're going to see X is blue because it gets to case blue and X is equal to blue. So we're going to console.log X is blue, and then we're going to break. So we're not going to continue any more of the cases. Now, if we instead say X is equal to cyan, which is not any of these, then we can say a default. So if we say default, and then we say console.log X is none of these options, then we're going to see that text. X is none of these options. Because when we get to the end, if there's a default, then we're going to execute this. So that's it for this video. We looked at functions, if statements, and switch statements. If you found this useful, then please subscribe so you can keep up to date with the rest of the videos.